Hey guys, and welcome back to Gap Gracepoint Online. Remember that we're in the middle of our hashtag followers series as we look at the life of Jesus and his followers and how their lives show to us how we should be living as followers of Jesus today. And so today we have episode 3 of our hashtag followers series, and we look at follow and ask. Our story today is from Mark 5 verse 21 to 43. Today we learn about a man who was in a real hurry to get to the front of the crowd. You see, he had heard that Jesus was back in town and everyone wanted to see Jesus. And so the crowd really started to gather. Imagine some people wanted to hear and see what Jesus had to say. Other people wanted to go to Jesus and ask him to heal them or someone they loved. Or some people were just curious to see who Jesus was and what this man was all about. And so a large crowd formed where Jesus was. And this man was in a particular hurry to get to the front of it for a very special reason. This man named Jairus was really anxious to get to Jesus because he had something to ask Jesus. When he finally got to the front of the crowd, after pushing people and asking them to move out the way, he went to Jesus and he asked him, "Jesus, please will you come and heal my daughter? She's very sick." Jairus loved his daughter, and he knew that Jesus would care about his daughter just as much because he'd heard that Jesus is a compassionate and kind person. So Jesus went with Jairus right away. But this was even more difficult as they were now fighting to get through the crowd who didn't want to let Jesus go because they wanted to hear more of Jesus. And so as they were going through this crowded area, Jesus suddenly stopped as he felt something happen. Jesus stopped and he said, "Who touched me?" Now imagine being one of the disciples and being with Jesus as they were going through this crowd. They must have thought, Jesus, we're going through a crowd where people are rubbing and they're pushing against each other because they're so close. Someone, anyone could have touched you. But Jesus said, "No, someone touched me." And he looked around to see who it was. Very shyly and very scared, an older woman came forward and she said, "I touched you, Jesus." The woman told Jesus that she had been sick for a very long time, and the minute where she had touched Jesus, she had been healed of that sickness. Jesus knew and he could have felt that that person who touched him had been healed in that instant. It was a different kind of touch. It was a healing touch that had happened by her touching Jesus. And so this woman who had been sick for so long was healed just by touching the hem of Jesus' cloak that he was wearing. Imagine how amazing that must have been. And so Jesus said to her, "Go in peace." Then suddenly some men came pushing through the crowd to Jairus and said, "Don't bother the teacher anymore." The teacher was another name they had for Jesus. And so they said, "Don't bother Jesus anymore. Your daughter has just died. Don't bother him to come to the house anymore, for he cannot heal her." Jairus must have thought, "Oh man, if this crowd hadn't been in the way, if this woman hadn't stopped Jesus, my daughter might still have been saved. She would have had a chance." Perhaps he would have been quite angry or really sad or disappointed at what had just happened. But Jesus had a great plan still in mind for this situation. Jesus and Jairus continued walking, and as they got to the house, Jesus went in. There were already many people that had started to gather to mourn this young woman as she had just died, and so Jesus had to push through this crowd again. And so he got to this little girl's room and he said, "Don't cry. She's just sleeping." How crazy these people might have thought that Jesus was. She's not sleeping, they must have thought. She is dead. She's not just sleeping, Jesus. You must be crazy. And so Jesus took the little girl's hand in his own hand and he said to her, "Little girl, get up." And in that moment, she opened her eyes and she sat up. How weird that must have been for everyone in that room to see her dead 1 minute and the next she's sitting up, her eyes wide open, and she was alive and completely well. Jesus showed that his love and power could care for people in all kinds of situations. From the woman that was walking on the street who was so desperate for healing that she reached out just to touch the hem of Jesus' garment, to going to the young girl's house, touching her hand and saying, "Stand up." She was alive again. Jesus showed his care and compassion and his healing power to help people in all situations. Even though many, many years have passed since these events occurred, and since the followers of Jesus that we hear about in the story were alive, it is still true for us today. These people were so brave as to go to Jesus and ask for his help, to ask for his healing, and to ask him to help them through their situation, even though their situation was very different, both the woman and both the younger girl. But they could go to Jesus and ask for his help. In the same way, Jesus wants us as followers of God to tell people that they can ask Jesus for that healing. Jesus wants us to ask Him in all situations for His help, and then to know that He will help us. We can also help others by asking Jesus on their behalf, and that means praying for other people. And so we as followers of God are called to follow Jesus and ask for His help. Our memory verse for today comes from 1 Timothy 2 verse 1 in the NIV. I urge then, first of all, that requests, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for everyone. That means that we should follow God and ask for His help when we need it. Don't forget that in the comments below there is a resource for you to look at and complete for today's lesson. That's it from us here today at Gap Grace Point Online for our episode 3 of our #followers series. Don't forget that there are 2 more episodes in this series, so join us again next week for our #followers series. Bye guys, see you next week.